The Viking Portable Library World Bible, edited by Robert O. Ballou. The Taoist. Like earth and water, the fire is contained in air. From the works of Chuang Tze, all things are one. Tze Che E. Tze Che E of Non Ko. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Excuse me if I did it wrong. And, oh yeah, there's inflections in Chinese too, so I'm really out of my water there. Sat leaning on a table, looking up to heaven, he sighed and became silent, as though soul and body had parted. Yen Chuang Tze Yu, who was standing by him, exclaimed, "What are you thinking about, that your body should thus become like dry wood, your mind like dead ashes?" "My friend," replied Tze Che, "great knowledge embraces the whole, small knowledge a part only. Great speech is universal, small speech is particular. For wherever, when the mind is locked in sleep, or whether when in waking hours the body is released, we are subject to daily mental perturbations, indecision, want of penetration, concealment, fretting fear, and trembling terror. Now like a javelin the mind flies forth, the arbiter of right and wrong. Now like a solemn covenanter it remains firm, the guardian of right secured. Then as under autumn and winter's blight comes gradual decay, a passing away, like the flow of water never to return. Finally, the block, when all is choked up, like an old drain, the failing mind, which shall not see light again. Joy and anger, sorrow and happiness, caution and remorse, come upon us by turns, with ever-changing mood. They come like music from hollowness, like mushrooms from damp. Daily and nightly they alternate within us, but we cannot tell whence they sprang. Can we then hope in a moment to lay our finger upon their very cause? But for these emotions I should not be, but for me they would have no scope. So far we can go, but we do not know what it is that brings them into play. 'Twould seem to be a soul, but the clue to its existence is wanting. That such a power operates is credible enough. Though we cannot see its form, it has functions without form. Take the human body with all its manifold divisions. Which part of it does a man love best? Does he not cherish all equally? Or has he a preference? Do not all equally serve him? And do these servitors then govern themselves? Or are they subdivided into rulers and subjects? Viewed from the standpoint of Tao, a beam and a pillar are identical. So are ugliness and beauty, greatness, wickedness, perverseness, and strangeness. Separation is the same as construction. Construction is the same as destruction. Nothing is subject either to construction or to destruction, for these conditions are brought together into one. Only the truly intelligent understand this principle of the identity of all things. They do not view things as apprehended by themselves, subjectively, but transfer themselves into the position of the things viewed, and viewing them thus, they are able to comprehend them, nay, to master them. And he who can master them is near. So it is that to place oneself in subjective relation with externals without consciousness of their objectivity, this is Tao. But to wear out one's intellect in an obstinate adherence to the individuality of things, not recognizing the fact that all things are one, this is called 3 in the morning. What is 3 in the morning? The devil's hour? No, you don't. Someone's going to get at that. What is 3 in the morning? Asked Tze Yu. A keeper of monkeys, replied Tze Che. said with regard to the rations of chestnuts that each monkey was to have 3 in the morning and 4 at night. But at this the monkeys were very angry. So the keepers said they might leave 4 in the morning and 3 at night, with which arrangement they were all well pleased. If there was a beginning, there was a time before that beginning, and a time before the time which is before the time of that beginning. Do they mean morning as in the first half of the day, or do they mean, like 3 hours after midnight or 2 hours after midnight, like we would think for most of the year nowadays? Anyways, if there was a beginning, then there was a time before that beginning, and a time before that beginning, which was before the time of that beginning. If there's an existence, there must have been a non-existence. If there was a time when nothing existed, then there must have been a time before that, when even nothing did not exist. Suddenly, when nothing came into existence, could one really say whether it belonged to the category of existence or of non-existence? Even the very words I have just now uttered, I cannot say whether they have been uttered or not. There is nothing under the canopy of heaven greater than the tip of an autumn spikelet. A vast mountain is a small thing. Neither is there any age greater than that of a child, cut off in infancy. Chuang Tze himself died young. The universe and I came into being together, and I and everything therein are one. So look at the big picture, rather than focusing on a couple negative things here and there. It's the important thing, or rather than letting one part keep the other part from going. And, existence is a system. No absolute. If a man sleeps at a damp place, he gets lumbago and dies. But how about an eel? And living up in a tree is precarious and trying to the nerves. But how about monkeys? Of the man, the eel, and the monkey, whose habitat is the right one? Absolutely. Human beings feed on flesh. Deer on grass. Centipedes on snakes. Owls and crows on mice. Of these 4, whose is the right taste? Absolutely. Monkey mates with monkey. Hopefully. The buck with the doe. Eels consort with fishes, while men admire Mao Jeong and Lei Chi, at the sight of whom fishes plunge deep down in the water, birds soar high in the air, and deer hurry away. Well, should probably learn to be calm about it and not scare off all the animals, but sometimes it's not your fault. Yet, who shall say which is the correct standard of beauty? In my opinion, the standard of human virtue, and of positive and negative, is so obscured that it is impossible to actually know it as such. And yeah, people make things too black and white, but there are certain virtues that one can look at. But the dream and the dreamer. Chu Chiao addressed Chuang Tze as follows. I heard Confucius say, "The true sage pays no heed to mundane affairs. He neither seeks gain nor avoids injury. He acts nothing at the hands of man. He adheres without questioning to Tao. Without speaking, he can speak. He can speak and yet say nothing. And so he roams beyond the limits of this dusty world. These," added Confucius, "are wild words. Now to me they are the skillful embodiment of the Tao. What, sir, is your opinion?" Points upon which the Yellow Emperor doubted, replied Chuang Tze. "How should Confucius know. Those who dream of the banquet wait to lamentation and sorrow. Those who dream of lamentation and sorrow wake to join the hunt. While they dream, they do not know that they dream. Some will even interpret the very dream they are dreaming, and only when they awake do they know it was a dream. By and by comes the great awakening, and then we find out that this life is really a great dream. Fools think they are awake now, and flatter themselves. They know if they are really princes or peasants. Confucius and you are both dreams. And I, who say you are dreams, I am but a dream myself. This is a paradox. Tomorrow a sage may arise to explain it. But that tomorrow will not be until 10,000 generations have gone by. That's quite the delay, but think about that for a second. So my New Age religion playlists, I have a series of things. I have a 45-part program that's yet to be put up. I have some other papers that plan to be put up in the future. Some are just about a meeting, some are longer, and I do intend to get to that. And the focus there is on dreams, spiritual experiences, I guess psychological experiences is what dreams tend to be for people, particularly when you're programming dreams. And that's really what they try to do to you. But anyways, no, dreams are an important thing to consider. Am I dreaming right now? Touch the edge of the door. Granting that you and I argue, if you beat me and not I you, are you necessarily right and I wrong? Or if I beat you and not you me, am I necessarily right and you wrong? Or are we both partly right and partly wrong? Or are we both wholly right and wholly wrong? You and I cannot know this, and consequently the world will be in ignorance of the truth. Well, if you don't know, why are you arguing about it? Whom shall I employ as arbiter between us? If I employ someone who takes your view, he will side with you. How can such a one arbitrate between us? If I employ someone who takes my view, he will side with me. How can such a one arbitrate between us? And if I employ someone who either differs from or agrees with both of us, he will be equally unable to decide between us. Since then you and I and man cannot decide, must we not depend upon another? Such dependence is as though it were not dependence. We are embraced in the obliterating unity of God. There is perfect adaptation to whatever may eventuate, and so we complete our allotted span. Take no heed of time, nor of right and wrong, but passing into the realm of the infinite, take your final rest therein. Once upon a time, I, Chuang Tze, dreamt I was a butterfly, fluttering hither and thither, to all intents and purposes a butterfly. I was conscious only of following my fancies as a butterfly, and was unconscious of my individuality as a man. Suddenly I awoke, and there I lay, myself again. Now I do not know whether I was then a man dreaming, or I was a butterfly, or whether I am now a butterfly dreaming I am a man. Very famous analogy. Chuang Tze. The nature of God. He who knows what God is, and knows what man is, has attained. Knowing what God is, he knows that he himself proceeded therefrom. Knowing what man is, he rests in the knowledge of the known, waiting for the knowledge of the unknown, working out one's allotted span, and not perishing in mid-career. This is the fullness of knowledge. God is a principle which exists by virtue of its own intrinsicality and operates spontaneously without self-manifestation. Herein, however, there is a flaw. knowledge is dependent upon fulfillment, and this fulfillment is uncertain. How can it be known that my divine is not really human, and my human really divine? So when it's limited like a creation, you're not really referring to how God is, now are you? The degradation of horses and men. Horses have hooves to carry them over frost and snow, hair to protect them from the wind and cold. They eat grass and drink water, and fling up their heels over the champaign. Such is the real nature of horses. Palatial dwellings are of no use to them. The one day, Po Lo appeared, saying, "I understand the management of horses." So he branded them, and clipped them, and pared their hooves, and put halters on them, tying them up by the head, and shackling them by the feet, and disposing them in stables, with the result that 2 or 3 in every 10 died. Then he kept them hungry and thirsty, trotting them and galloping them, and grooming and trimming, with the misery of the tasseled bridle before, and the fear of the knotted whip behind, until more than half of them were dead. Don't, that's a, how could someone get somebody that bad at managing the stables? But anyways, nevertheless, every age extols Po Lo for his skill in managing horses. Really? Really? Now I regard government of the empire from quite a different point of view. The people have certain natural instincts to weave and clothe themselves, to till and feed themselves. These are common to all humanity, and all are agreed thereon. Such instincts are called heaven-sent. And so in the days when natural instincts prevailed, men moved quietly and gazed steadily. At that time there were no roads over mountains, nor boats, nor bridges over water. All things were produced, each for its own proper sphere. Birds and beasts multiplied, trees and shrubs grew up. The former might be led by the hand. You could climb up and peep into the raven's nest, for then man dwelt with birds and beasts, and all creation was one. There was no distinctions of good and bad men. Being all equally without knowledge, their virtue could not go astray. Being all equally without evil desires, they were in a state of natural integrity, the perfection of human existence. But when sages appeared, tripping people over charity, and fettering with duty to one's neighbor, doubt found its way into the world. And then, with their gushing over music and fussing over ceremony, the empire became divided against itself. On one hand, the natural. On the other hand, the excessive. On the other hand, another excessiveness, or lacking, or... And thus it is when humans have their own say. But between Confucianism and what they call Taoism is probably the real way. Horses live on dry land and eat grass and drink water. When pleased, they rub their necks together. When angry, they turn round and kick up their... When angry, they turn round and kick up their heels at each other. Thus far only do their natural dispositions carry them. But bridled and bitted, with a plate of metal on their foreheads, they learn to cast vicious looks, to turn the head to bite, to resist, to get the bit out of the mouth, or the bridle into it. And thus their natures become depraved. The fault of Po Lo, in the days of Ho Hsia, the people did nothing in particular when at rest, and went nowhere in particular when they moved. Having food, they rejoiced. Having full bellies, they strolled about. Such were the capacities of the people. But when the sages came to worry them with ceremonies and music in order to rectify the form of government, and dangled charity and duty to one's neighbor before them in order to satisfy their hearts, Then the people began to develop a taste for knowledge, and to struggle one with the other in their desire for gain. This was the error of the sages, of letting alone. There has been such a thing as letting mankind alone. There has never been a thing as governing mankind. Letting alone springs from fear, lest man's natural dispositions be perverted, and their virtue laid aside. But if their natural dispositions be not perverted, nor their virtue laid aside, what room is there left for government? Because men are made to rejoice, and to sorrow, and to displace their center of gravity, they lose their steadiness. Of letting alone, that's the name of this one. I'm thinking of something else at the same time. That's how I work. I work on multiple levels at the same time often. They lose their steadiness and are unsuccessful in thought and action, and thus it is that the idea of surpassing others first came into the world. Tao Cha, Lao Tze, saying, "If the empire is not to be governed, how are men's hearts to be kept in order?" "Be careful," replied Lao Tze, "not to interfere with the natural goodness of the heart of man. Man's heart may be forced down or stirred up. In each case, the issue is fatal. By gentleness, the hardest heart may be softened, but try to cut and polish it. 'Twill glow like fire or freeze like ice. In the twinkling of an eye, it will pass beyond the limits of the four seas and repose profoundly still, in motion far away in the sky. No bolt can bar, no bond can bind. Such is the human heart. The Tao of God. The Tao of God operates ceaselessly. The Tao of God operates ceaselessly, and all things are produced. The Tao of the sovereign operates ceaselessly, and the empire rallies around him. The Tao of the sage operates ceaselessly, and all within the limit of surrounding ocean acknowledge his sway. Surrounding ocean acknowledge his sway. He who apprehends God, who is in relation with the sage, and who recognizes the radiating virtue of the sovereign, his actions will be to him unconscious, and the actions of repose. The repose of the sage is not what the world calls repose. His repose is the result of his mental attitude. All creation could not disturb his equilibrium, hence his repose. When the water is still, it is like a mirror, reflecting the beard and the eyebrows. It gives the accuracy of the water level, and the philosopher makes it his model. See? I have to have a beard because I'm a philosopher. And if water thus derives lucidity from stillness, how can much more the faculties of the mind of the sage, being in repose, becomes the mirror of the universe, the speculum of all creation. Repose, tranquility, stillness, and action. These were the levels of the universe, the ultimate perfection of Tao. Therefore, wise rulers and sages rest therein. Repose, tranquility, stillness, and action, these were the source of all things. Keep to this when coming forward to pacify a troubled world, and your merit shall be great, and your name illustrious, and the empire united into one. In your repose, you will be wise. In your movements, powerful. By inaction, you will gain honor. And by confining yourself to the pure and simple, you will hinder the whole world from struggling with you for show. The circling sky. The sky turns round, the earth stands still. Sun and moon pursue one another. Who causes this? Who directs this? Who has leisure enough to see that such movements continue? Some think there is a mechanical arrangement which makes these bodies move as they do. Others think they revolve without being able to stop. Well, we do live in a mechanical universe, but there is a spiritual side of the whole thing. The clouds cause rain. The rain causes clouds. Whose kindly bounty is this? Who has leisure enough to see that such result is achieved? Wind comes from the north. It blows now east, now west. Now it whirls aloft. Who puffs it forth? Who has leisure enough? Who has leisure enough to be flapping at this way? Who has leisure enough to be flapping it this way or that? I should like to know the cause of all this. Confucius and Lao Tze. Confucius visited Lao Tze and spoke of charity and duty to one's neighbor. Lao Tze said, the chaff from winnowing will blind a man's eyes so that he cannot tell the points of the compass. Mosquitoes will keep a man awake all night with their biting. And just in the same way, this talk of charity and duty to one's neighbor drives me nearly crazy. Sirs, strive to keep the world to its own original simplicity. And as the wind bloweth, where it listeth, so let virtue establish itself. Wherefore such undue energy as those searching for a fugitive with a big drum? The snow goose is white, without a daily bath. The raven is black, without daily coloring itself. The original simplicity of black and of white is beyond the reach of argument. The vista of fame and reputation is not worthy of enlargement. When the pond dries up and the fishes are left upon dry ground, to moisten them with the breath or to dampen them with the little spittle is not to be compared with leaving them in the first instance in their native rivers and lakes. On returning from this visit to Lao Tze, Confucius did not speak for 3 days. A disciple asked him, saying, Master, when you saw Lao Tze, in what direction do you admonish him? I saw a dragon, replied Confucius, a dragon by which convergence showed a body, by radiation became color, and riding upon the clouds of heaven nourished the 2 principles of creation. My mouth was agape. I could not shut it. How then do you think I was going to admonish Lao Tze? So there's always somebody that we can learn from.